Yeah, starting with my current position. So I am currently working with WNS as head of data science, innovation analytics practice. Uh, as all of you are bringing tons of experience, so I am also probably 2 decade plus years in this space. So analytics, machine learning, in particular, for all 20 years, kind of a thing. In terms of my education, I'm a BTech in mechanical, and then happened to go for masters in applied mathematics from IIT Chennai, and then went to German University for my masters again. And then post that, I went for MBA and then some certification program here and there from different universities. So that's how my learning journey is till now. Prior to WNS, I tried my luck in entrepreneurship for 3 years, so built a fintech product and you can exit. And then prior to that, so before 2018, I was heading engineering and technology position at Ingersoll Rand, where I was for about 5 years, and then took this break. And prior to that, I was with a service company like TCS and others for about 12, 13 years. That's in short, Mr. Rajiv, my experience. So any question probably I can address now or over to other panelists, and then we'll catch up.
Thanks a lot. That's good. Who wants to go next? Saswat?
Thank you. So I head the data management and analytics globally, worldwide for Philips GBS right now. And before that, I'm an economics graduate. So I passed out my master's in economics from JNU Delhi. After that, I have been working with about more than 20 years. Started with GE, few years, moved to HSBC, was their risk leader. Worked for Capital One, that's a credit card company, mostly in the risk management profile, risk management leader for Capital One, mortgages as well as retail, etc., different businesses where I used to lead again risk management and analytics there. Currently I'm with the health technology conglomerate that I just mentioned, and head all the data. So basically master data, a lot of other data that we have, as well as analytics and data sciences.
Great.
That's a brief profile.
Great. Ashim?
Thank you. So myself is Ashim Sheth. I was currently working as a head of data for Uno Digital Bank. Uno Digital Bank is a completely digital bank which is offering that entire digital spectrum of banking thing. So prior to this role, actually, I was working with Standard Chartered and Citibank on that analytics point and data. When I lead the responsible AI for right now in the Standard Chartered Bank before this role. And in current role, more or less responsible to build that foundation of the data platform for analytics and for any kind of requirement. And since our bank is right now just building, so it's a great opportunity to, I think, build the data platform. I think many of you guys agree that where that our standard bank or maybe that any organization where there are different system is there, platform is there, you will not get opportunity to build a fully digitized or fully new technology platform, right? So that's my, I'll say that the best opportunity I'm doing. So as an education, I did my master's in statistics from Calcutta University and also MTech from ISI Kolkata. And more or less over 16 to 17 years in this analytics and mainly on the BFSI domain. So I'll obviously take some question later. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Ravindra, what about your profile?
Thanks, Rajiv. So I'm Ravindra. I'm currently working as a senior director data science with Meesho for the last 4 years. I am looking at ranking and relevance plus monetization charter for Meesho. Prior to this, I have experience working in data roles with Flipkart, Hike Messenger, Goldman Sachs. So roughly 10, 11 years I have been in this. And I started my journey with Accenture around 2007. So overall, I have 15 plus years of experience in the industry. Yeah.
Great. Vivek, You're the last one.
Very happy to be here. So I'm Vivek. I head the Advanced Analytics and AI division of Narayana Health, which is one of the largest hospital chains in India. I've been with Narayana Health for about 12 years now. And similar to Ravindra, I have an overall experience of about 15 years. Started off as a programmer and completed my B school at IIM Bangalore, and I've been with Narayana after that. Very happy to be here interacting with all of you.
Great. I think we have an excellent spread of experience here, from health management to services and bank, a digital bank. Great. I think this is going to be an extremely interesting discussion. And let me start again by saying that you all are the experts, and I would like this to be interactive. Please interrupt and please speak up when you feel that there is a relevant input from your side, which adds value. Don't wait and don't make it a question answer session, please. You're most welcome. And also, you're most welcome to talk about any experience that you've had previously, not necessarily in your current role, but also previous role. It is your individual expertise that comes up. And I'm also looking forward to learning a lot from you. So the topic, and I like this topic a lot. I mean, making data analytics work, as suggested by Saswata. Yes, that's an excellent way of putting it. We need to avoid the mismanagement of the data analytics projects. We need to try and make sure that the projects work, and also the various initiatives in the company that we have, talking about certain terms, and just so that we are on the same page, I would like to talk about a couple of terms that may come up during our discussions. And one of them is orphaned analytics. And I'm just reading out. Orphaned analytics are one-off machine learning models written to address a specific business or operational problem, but never engineered for sharing, reuse, and continuous learning and adapting. I think this is one of the, I would say, mistakes which happen during the lifetime of an organization, when there are certain initiatives which are taken, which then become very specific to solving a problem. And then these sort of machine learning models become very isolated in terms over time. And that's one of the issues that we face a lot. And the other term is on the drift in data analytics. And that again, when you're talking of predictive analysis and analytics, data science, machine learning, it's an evolution of data that invalidates the data model itself. So this is also something that we have seen in the past, where we make a data machine learning model and also work on the data analytics, and ultimately the data evolves so much. And we've seen that in, for example, in climate change as today, when you start models of climate change, the basic model which we were working on at one time has changed so much that many of your data analytics projects may not work. So this is also, you can define it as the process of charting the as found data for your equipment over time. So with this, let me start. First of all, I request all of you to share as much as you can in terms of practical experiences. Talk about specifics without naming. I would request you not to name the vendors or the products if you're not comfortable, or any organization, but please do share about your specific experiences. So let me start in the reverse order. Vivek, why don't you start with your experience and what you would like to highlight in terms of, one, the data architecture in your organization or what you're talking about, so that, again, to bring in more clarity about the various initiatives that you're talking about.
Sure. I'll start with a broad overview of the kind of work that we do and the kind of systems we integrate with and what powers that architecture. In healthcare, there are several different applications that work in a healthcare chain. The core of it is the hospital management system, and there is electronic medical records. Then there is your ERP. You have other things like customer feedback or patient feedback systems, and so on. You have a multitude of applications. And in many cases, these applications don't speak to each other. We have a central cloud-based lakehouse architecture that connects to all of these data systems, integrates it, and makes it behave as if it is a single application. From that point on, we take it to our OLAP layer, and we have several modes of visualization through which we take it to our end user. Some through API-based write back into the source systems, some through dashboards and reports, and some through custom apps that we have built. The core of our work is around data integration, data cleaning, and setting up pipelines, which is on the data engineering side. And then you have analysis modeling, figuring out what problems need to be solved and how they need to be solved, and how the solutions need to be presented. Figuring that out, which our analysts do internally. And finally, building out the OLAP layer where data intelligence modeling comes in, tuning it for performance, structuring it for performance, and finally delivering it as visualizations in the various modes that I spoke about. We have different kinds of analytics that are there in play. Some are basic descriptive analytics, some which are in the line of forecasting or predicting, some that fall into optimizations. Then there are core healthcare models that we build, which are in clinical AI and clinical ML, which work with patient data. So that is a broad spectrum of what we do.
So one question, Vivek, as you mentioned that different systems and how the different data and structure you are working on. One question, are you also working on some kind of design of experiment or kind of clinical trial also with that thing, or is that not right now in the scope?
So not specifically clinical trial, but we have clinical algorithms that run that help doctors make clinical decisions. Again, they split into three streams primarily. One is on image analytics, where automated interpretation of radiology images is something that we work with. For example, if you have an X-ray or a CT or an MRI, can the machine automatically pick up abnormalities from those images and highlight it? Secondly, there are algorithms which run on clinical text and mining that for information, which is basically on free running clinical notes primarily. The third one is on structured tabular data, where a patient during their stay in the hospital, they'll have several parameters that are captured over a period of time. So can you say continuously predict risk for the patient based on which certain decisions can be taken? Those kinds of algorithms are there which work on tabular data. That is what we do on the clinical side.
Great. So, Ashim, maybe you can take on from here.
Sure.
Your digital banks are something which are very new, so what really does it mean in terms of how does it relate to a bank, and especially in terms of the data architecture, data analytics?
Sure. So I'll also cover, because it's a very interesting area of the data architecture, data analytics, and also you mentioned about few things like orphan analytics and drift of the data analytics as well. And if you think about this, a vast area, and the evolution is also very evident. That maybe because data analytics, if you think about, is not that kind of a time being it's working. It's maybe 15, 20, 25 maximum years. Okay. So when we're talking about that digital bank is not very different than that any other thing. Only thing is that we don't have any presence in that the physical presence of branch, how generally the classical bank does. So why that difference is coming? The difference is coming that much information we need to collect from that throughout the process. And also when we are doing that onboarding or servicing a customer, since there is a no physical touch point as is, so we need to be much more accurate on that customer information and also act very quickly There is nothing that we can revert back and anything from the customer feedback. There would be obviously few channels is always there for digital bank. Also, it's generally the service channel. That means customer can at least reach to that the bank for any complaint, for any service request or anything. But generally, we any digital bank objective is always that customers should be able to do anything by their mobile phone. That's it. So generally, sometimes they call this that the bank in the palm. So in your hand, basically. Okay. So when we are talking about that architecture, is architecture actually depend on that organization also? Because some depend on that. You can't be a single architecture as per my personal view for long time also. Because you can't able to invest that huge investment for your data infrastructure initially, because as and when you are developing your business grow, some more investment can come, because ultimately as a banker also someone need to see that how much ROI I am getting to invest in the data analytics or data infrastructure, right? So that architecture in my view generally it also need to be refreshed as a at least 5 to 10 years horizon basis, because that time also in market there are many more innovation also come. But as a core you need to fix with something, so that you don't need to invest and revamp entire thing. Now if you talk about, there are different architecture right now available, like lake house or database, and each of these architecture have its own pros and cons, and that also you need to understand based on your how the different core system is there. Because right now there are different core system like physical or classical core system is also there, SaaS based system is also there. And when SaaS based system we are talking about, I mean SaaS, talking about, or software as a service you are talking about, those core system that the data exchange is very different than the common server based system. So that also you need to keep it in mind when you are keeping your organization or data architecture. Because that API, when you are calling, how you are getting that response, by when you are getting a response, is a batch or is a real-time basis, that also required when you are thinking about your data architecture. Otherwise, what will happen? You will not able to, you are planning to serve, ultimately what is the purpose of your data analytics or any organization data architecture? So basically, we need to have that all information as a single source of truth. So there would not be a multiple version of that data, and that data should be useful such a way that we can utilize that data or information for business purpose. That any kind of business line, that may be a banking, that may be right. We mention about the healthcare, or maybe any kind of BFSI other than BFSI also.
Right.
Ultimate
So,
objective is also to accurate information and get a meaningful insight.
right. So, we'll come back to you. So, Saswat, would you like to explain a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rajiv and Ashim. I think it's really about what do we get out of analytics? What do we get out of data?
Right.
Good, we have great architecture, it needs refresh, that is great. But how do we make a meaningful contribution to the bottom line or top line or whatever the metric is of the organization, right? So for that, I think one of the comments that you made, Rajiv, on orphan analytics, I think that is quite common. And the reason I think orphan analytics needs to be celebrated is like the startup culture. You have 9 failing and 1 succeeding, and the one which succeeds is 100x from a bottom line or top line perspective. So essentially, I think orphan analytics is essential to be there, but the main thing is to fail fast. So if there is orphan analytics, fail, but move to the next one as soon as possible, and don't put everything in all eggs in one basket on one analysis or whatever that ML model or analysis is. And of course, see, at the end of the day, we will all do good planning, or at least that is what we always think when we start any project. Very good planning, what we will do, when we will do, what type of outcome we want to get to, 10x, 20x, whatever that is. But yeah, some of them fail because of even if you do the best planning, you may not get what you want via analytics drift, or you nowadays use you use the example of climate change, right? So nowadays, that we don't use the word forecasting. We call it nowcasting. because forecasting is too much. You don't have so many months to forecast. With COVID and all, everything is accelerated, and you don't know what is the rate of acceleration, which means that you have to look at only data which is on a daily or a weekly basis or whatever, or hourly basis. So yeah, I think these are exciting times. Your comments are very, very valid, but at the end of the day, it's all about balance, and we should not be afraid to fail. That's my 2 cents, Rajiv.
Excellent, excellent. Jitendra, why don't you describe your experience and especially relevance to data analytics?
Okay. No, thanks, Rajiv. I think it's a good input. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I think the great insight. So maybe I'll touch base a little bit on the data journey. I think we have seen in last 5-7 years, like people were working with a structured database like SQL, then moved to Teradata, kind of a big database storage, but still to an extent it's structured and to an extent unstructured. But the pace at which the data generation is happening today, probably we need a centralized database, right? And that's where I think few panelists already talked about lakehouse and different form of data storage through Snowflake and things like that, right? I think organizations are struggling to cope up with this change, and many times, at least I have seen that the proper visibility of what is coming their way was not there, and hence the choice of platform led to the problem. I mean, this is one level of problem I have seen. So maybe they started with a MongoDB or some form of data, and then they realized that probably they need to quickly move to a lakehouse, or they jumped to the lakehouse probably, but the requirement was not to that scale, and the bill was started going up. So basically, they had to scale down and things like that. So that's a one level of problem I have seen in the market. Then the second level of problem, I think the previous panelist was talking about, like, what is the problem we are really trying to solve, right? So analytics is not a solution to every problem, or analytics is not a kind of medicine that you just take it and the problem is gone, right? We really need to know what we are going to solve, what is doable, what is not doable, or achievable, what is not achievable. So many times I have seen at least that people set wrong expectation out of an analytics project, saying that, hey, I can improve bottom line by 10% or 20%, but the reality is other way around, that either you don't have the required source of data to basically play with, that's your limitation, or probably you overestimated the gain out of it, right? So that's also a very key aspect of setting the expectation in any project. Otherwise, project may be successful, but the expectation was not met, and hence it was a failure. So this is another instance I have seen, and again multiple instances, because people who are basically selling the offering, sometimes particularly from a services side, they sometimes miss-sell. Okay, and we need to be mindful of that. If you are working in a captive unit, again to an extent you also sell, right? You go to your board or strategy planning and you commit something, and then you ask for the investment. So selling is everywhere. So I think we need to be mindful of what we are selling. And then the last piece, probably, Rajiv, you talked about orphan analytics. I would say, how are we deploying the machine learning model or analytics model in the business, right? Do we have the right governance in place, right? Because if you are not bringing in right governance in place, people will always doubt about the outcome of the model, and the adoption of the solution is not as wide as you think, right? So in my experience, I have also seen issues where things are not governed in a proper way. So some model will work fine, some model may not work fine, and hence the finger pointing will start happening, why it happened and who approved it, and so on and so forth. So I think the third leg is governance piece, where you basically define a right framework, where you bring all the stakeholder, right, from accuracy and predictability of we were talking, versus compliance part of it, right? Are we doing what we are doing is compliant, auditable, and things like that? If that is not there, that can also lead to a problem, and sometimes we may have to pull back, right? So these are the three different things, probably, Rajiv, I have seen in my experience. I'll be happy to go deep on any one of them, or any combination. Over to you.
Yeah, sure. So Ravindra, maybe in addition to talking about the data architecture, data analytics projects, what you can now do is, since you're the last one in this round, also talk about those projects where you felt that things could have been handled better. where you felt that, yes, you did things. I'm not saying, we CIOs never really say that a project has failed. I have yet to hear of somebody saying, oh, everything failed. Well, it works. It may not have worked in time or fully to the requirements, but yes, you do realize that things could have happened in a better way. The outcome could have been better. The business requirements that you're meeting could have been better. So why don't you also talk about that aspect?
Sure, Asif. I think great insights coming out from the panel. So in terms of architecture, we are no different. We also have our data lakes and then data warehouse and then other layers on top where you can probably access things in real time, near real time, streaming. So all of those probably are very similar. Uh, in terms of using these platforms, right? I think Shashwat talked about uh, having this culture of failing fast. And then Jitendra also pointed out about bringing the right governance, right? So these could be two extremes, right, of a spectrum. So where Meesho probably gets value out of is trying to have a fine balance between your checks and balances as well as failing fast, right? So what we tend to do is enable people to do experiments as quickly as possible, get results out of it. And it's not binary that an experiment is a success or a failure. You iterate on it and probably you would able to achieve 90% of the impact that you wanted to, right? So initially you start with some goals, but you probably realize only 90% of it. So Meesho basically does that with enough checks and balances, right? Now, what has gone wrong sometimes is where if you allow people to do experiments quickly without putting in a lot of thoughts, right? The problem first approach kind of takes some hit where people would see that they have audience available, they can just experiment and get the answers. So the analytical rigor, they would not want to put as much, right? If you just ask them to keep experimenting and getting answers from the data itself, experiments are costly, right? So we try to make sure that we reflect upon what has happened. So over a period of say quarter, we look back which all experiments, the path they followed, where there were things that could have been done better, whether people could have gone deeper, understood the problem well, and narrowed down on the number of experiments they would want to run. So these kind of rituals is something that we set. Of course, you can have systems, but these rituals, these cultural things are also very important, which you want to bring into your team. And that is one thing that we have been doing, right? And talking about the checks and balances, right? So there, what is important is basically looking at your data evolution as well, and not via some basic dashboards which probably companies end up building. Also make it more reactive, so whenever certain uh, data or behaviors of users or products are shifting, you get timely alerts. The right stakeholders are alerted in a timely fashion, and they're able to trigger the corrective actions on top of it, right? So these are the things that you tend to uh, bring into your system so that the process become more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you're right. So, Saswat, I mean, would you also expand on something, in terms of best practices and, how you manage not just the data architecture and data uh, analytics part, but also in terms of the business benefits that you very rightly spoke about, It's a very important aspect. So, what are the best practices that come to your mind?
Yeah. Thank you, Rajiv. And I think the views were very genuine and balanced. So I think what is very important is also to have a very sound project management structure or a program management structure where we have a clear outcome that we are aiming for with the right timelines around it, right? I can want to increase my revenue by 100 million in 3 years time. If that is the strategy, on top of that strategy, we need to backwardly find out how do I get there and what can analytics do? Because at the end of the day, it's just an enabler. I mean, of course, it's an important enabler, but there are so many other things that need to happen to get there. So first, I think the charter is very important. Jitendra talked about governance. If we are not aligned with the right people, it will not happen. So that is very important for us to know where the alignment is. Depending on that, we should also give a little bit of freedom to the analytics team to really sometimes do some experiments, but that has to be controlled because we should all be very cost conscious. Nobody has a free purse or an open purse. So and then managing that, and whenever there is a success out of one ML model, there should be a way to or opportunity to scale it up well so that we can use it for the entire organization, getting to the whatever the objective is. But the biggest thing is getting to know and fixing the right objective and the right timeline. I think that is very important. Rest will follow. Sometimes it will fail a few things, but finally, if we get the outcome, that is it.
Yeah, I'm really very happy to see that, the discussions are not just about analytics and the technology and the tools. We're also talking about the business benefits that go with it. So this is something which has happened in the last maybe 10, 15 years, that the CIOs and the teams that are working on technology really have business in their mind and are also suggesting now total revamp of the business strategy, the business models, and a lot of times coming out with totally new, different types of business strategies that work. Great, very happy to hear this. Ashim, would you like to add on to certain best practices, or also specifically if you can talk about some things which could have been handled better?
No, actually, I agree with Shashwat also. See, analytics is important enabler, but it cannot be the single one who can tell that, okay, this project, how it is goes. So generally, typically, I also observe in my different organization part also. So it is important to rightly engage that your stakeholders who are actually part of that entire project. So analytics may just some portion of insight and other thing they are keeping in the plate, right? But ultimately business also need to take that insight and how they want to implement that solution, that also need to be taken. I just give an example. Suppose generally in banking sector, what happened, and you may found that analytics giving different insight that how they need to connect to that customer or cross sell different product or engage more, right? But when you want to engage that product or business, also think about what would be the attractive offer for that particular campaign, right? But without that offer, whatever that your analytics is doing by simple or by any ML model, that accurate prediction also, that will not work. Now, what my point was that in any of this project, that engagement of the different stakeholder and clear of their part also is very important to successful any project. It's not about that the failure of some portion or failure of any particular business function, right? Few best practices what we generally observe also, and I totally agree with others also. We need to fail, and we need to fail fast. Otherwise, it would be kind of no new things will come up, because if you are not doing any kind of experiment, but that would be a control. I think that's the one of the part is coming also from our side. So best practice generally what we need to follow, that okay, initial phase also, if you need to see that this particular project is not able to make any kind of benefits, it's better to upfront, not to that elongated this to fail for that another few weeks or few months, right? Second thing also, it would be very clear that what we are going to solve. We may not be able to solve that 100%, but is that something we are thinking that is very clear to solve, and maybe 50% or 60% we are able to solve that based on that the current whatever we have, the different tools or different opportunity. Over to you, Rajiv.
Great. So, Vivek, coming to you, I think yours is a unique field now in this group. So maybe you could expand a little bit more, and also in terms of specific, things which could have been handled better. Why do you think so?
Some very pertinent points that the earlier panelists spoke, and I'd like to share our views on those and how we handle some of those situations, especially on analytics meeting certain objectives and around experimentation. So we have a very clear demarcation in the use cases that the analytics team takes up. We classify those into exploratory and problem solving. Problem solving use cases are those which have a very clear objective in mind. And we ask the teams to define the objective at a very, very granular level so that it is not an objective that says we'll increase revenue. It is about how you are going to increase revenue. It is through this particular channel by doing this particular activity so that tracking is very accurate and we are able to understand if the project is meeting its objective. On the other hand, our exploratory projects, that is where people do not have clarity on a use case in that area specifically, but we want more visibility in that area to be able to come up with problem solving use cases. The success criteria for exploratory use cases is the number of problem solving use cases that it leads to, maybe 3 or 4 months down the line. And we have a balance between the exploratory use cases that are running and the problem solving use cases that are running at any point in time. To ensure a successful analytics implementation, two of the things we feel are critical. One is, do you have a process around use case identification, or is it opportunistic? If it is opportunistic, then most likely the teams that make the loudest noise will get their bandwidth from analytics. But if you have a process around it, which is thought through, and that process automatically generates new use cases for you in analytics, that is critical to ensure the success of an analytics stream. The second thing we focus on is institutionalization of analytics. When we say institutionalization, is analytics a choice or is it part of the process once it has been developed? In many cases where there are maybe descriptive analytics or dashboards that are developed, most of the times it is often a choice for people who are using it. They may be able to carry out their daily routine without looking at a particular dashboard or an analysis. They may be able to carry on with their existing decision unless it is built into the source system. So for those kinds of analytics, it is important that they get institutionalized, which means at the time of defining the problem, we also define the decisions that are going to be taken out of such an analysis and the pathway that people will take around this analysis. And that is very clearly defined and it has to become a part of the process. There are, of course, several aspects to how we go about institutionalizing it, but this is a high-level overview of how we look at it.
Great. So finally, coming to Jitendra, now, in addition to giving us the best practices and improvements that could have been handled, please also talk about certain concluding remarks that you feel that are emerging out of all these discussions. Excellent views that we've heard so far.
So, Raju, you have to bear with me. I think I have a little bit of background noise in the upper floor, but I'll try. So I think very good input, Vivek. I think what you said is very, very important, that the rigor is important. How do you select the project? In fact, I have seen in many cases where the kind of problem we are solving, right? One is I define as a direct problem, that you have a direct source of data which is in your custody or in your control, and you do a basic analytics and you are able to basically grab low-hanging fruits out of it, right? But the way I look at it, or at least I have experience in the industry, in that because of the social media, or what we call it now, connected customers, right? So in early days, there was only one-way communication, that the customer will call to your customer care center and will talk about the problem, right? And then you resolve it, and hence people are ingrained to do things in that way. I think the connected world or social media has given a completely different forum to basically vent out the problems. So probably the neighbors will know about your problem before you will come to know through your customer care channel, because they are venting out on social media, Twitter, Facebook, of the world. I think that's where analytics is playing a very crucial role. Sometimes business is willing to appreciate, sometimes they are not. But in my assessment, I have seen a humongous benefit coming out of it if you are able to integrate indirect source of data and direct source of data, and use analytics or AI/ML to generate intelligence about your customer behavior, right? be it about your product feedback, product review, or the trends emerging on the horizon in the market. I think if those things are implemented in a right way, I think analytics is the way out to solve this problem. So in short, Rajiv, I think that should be my parting comment. That how do we basically define the utility of the analytics is in our hand, and we need to be mindful of what problem we are basically trying to solve, whether trying to plug the low-hanging fruit or going for a strategic initiative. But in either case, if it is implemented well, it has a great value out there.
Sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, so I'm now going to open up the floor. Any questions between each other to any of the other panel members, or you would like to add any comments? Who would like to take on?
I can probably talk about the process that companies tend to set, right? So to me, I feel when we talk about process, that's something that you can either automate, code it up in-house, or you can use third-party tools. But a great analytics team is the one where the mindset that you drive is very exploratory. You're not kind of constrained by this is the problem statement and probably this is the path you need to follow, right? So if you open up that constraint, because essentially what they're doing is they're trying to find one answer in a haystack, one needle in a haystack, but there could be multiple needles. So if you kind of align all your analytics folks to the business objective, right, the business metric, let's say need to increase revenue by X percentage, right? Now when they go deeper into data, they always have that thing in mind that I need to increase this metric by this much. Are there different kind of insights that I might get, right? So if you open up that constraint, it helps. And this is mostly about allowing them to do continuous problem discovery, which feeds into your horizon 2. Basically, the way Vivek was pointing it out, like some of the things which are exploratory feeds into your problem statements for the next quarter or next 6 months, right? So that is where you need to enable these folks and kind of make it a ritual. This cannot be something that you can enforce via a tool or something, right? This is something which is a mindset that you need to bring into the system itself.
Yeah, I will probably just second to what Ravindra mentioned, right? The idea is to have the right guardrails, or in terms of statistics, plus minus 3 sigma. Create that plus minus 3 sigma. Let the creativity flow, because the people that we are talking about are by nature, by education, curious, and they want to do something. So as long as you have the right guardrail and you have the right objective given to them, they will figure out, and the timeline, they will figure out how to do it. Of course, you need to make sure that the alignments are there, and that is what all that very necessary. But at the end of the day, let them do what they are supposed to do, and then also there should be a scalability factor, so that once a winner is identified, it is quickly scalable, so that it can be used for the entire organization. So that is how at least analytics has prospered over the years, and it has. I have always seen a monotonically increasing adoption of analytics in every organization I have worked for in the last 20 years. So not that I'm saying it will happen, but I think it will. It is likely to continue.
So it's more of an art, a science, and it's not just dealing with statistics and numbers. It is actually, as you're saying, it requires an artistic mind, open and curious, and exploratory is the term that you used very rightly.
Yeah, it's pattern recognition using numbers, right? So it really depends how you want to call it. It's art or science. It's a mix of both, I would say.
And if you see that Saswata, also that insight, what generally we used to tell in that analytics, right? Insight means is actually you are seeing many data point, but ultimately you are bringing a story to tell to the people, right? So when you are making a story, it's basically you need to mix about or balance about that both science and arts, right? And one of the trend also what I was looking for quite a few that earlier basically analytics or data analytics part people need to consider that okay these are the people who can provide the numbers, right? Right now the trend is little more changing. They are saying that these people need to be part of that the decision making, so that the insight what you are bringing, they need to tell that what actually this insight for and how they need to be implement that. It's not about just to provide a number. Okay, my total balance is this many customer is this many customer are active, inactive, all those things. They also need to tell, and they are part of that right now in that the business decision making also. That change I was observing in at least that the banking and BFSI segment a lot.
Absolutely. Anybody else last half-minute comment or anything? I think this has been a really very interesting discussion, and frankly, it's huge information that we have been sharing now. Very happy. Thanks a lot for sharing very openly all your views, talking about the best practices means I also understand that there are those gaps which are there in the past, which you noticed, and you feel that this is what we should have done, and it would have definitely improved the results and made better success. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Good getting in touch with all of you. Please remain in touch. I think LinkedIn is a good platform. Let's keep in touch there.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.